Yo, 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 we back at it again. It's the Buff Missionary. And we're looking at chapter 2 of this great book, Steps of Christ, Peace Over the Storm, In Search of Peace. It's all true. Check it out. Highly recommend. Hopefully you've been catching up with the videos so far. It's been a lot of fun for me to go through the book that I enjoy so much. I've been going through it every year for the past several years, and there's always something new that I find in it that I appreciate greatly. And today we get to start chapter 2. So if you haven't seen the ones before, check those out, like, subscribe, and share, and follow along as we continue this journey through this book. Chapter 2 is called The Sinner's Need of Christ. We started out talking about God's love for man, and now we see the opposite side, the sinner's need of Christ. It says, man was originally endowed with noble powers and a well-balanced mind. He was perfect in his being and in harmony with God. His thoughts were pure, his aims were holy. But through disobedience, his powers were perverted and selfishness took the place of love. Selfishness took the place of love. Now, we hear the idea, the concept of love a lot. We do. It's something that many people are after. It's something that we recognize the world maybe could use more of when it comes to the conflicts and the controversies between different groups of people and those types of things. But something interesting that I heard about love was, usually when you ask people what's the opposite of love, they'll say hate. The opposite of love is not hate. Sometimes you'll hear people who are trying to be even more philosophical, and they'll answer the question, what's the opposite of hate? And they'll say, the opposite of love. They'll say, the opposite of love is actually apathy. It's not that either. Sorry. The opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is not apathy. The opposite of love is selfishness. Love implies something outside of you. To love, it's a verb. As a verb, it requires something to be loved. You cannot have love if it's just you in one spot by yourself. And this is actually one of the strongest evidences of the triune God, because to love, there has to be an object to love. Love doesn't exist. It can't exist in a vacuum. It's impossible. Love for others, it should be implied. I know these days we hear this term like self-love, and I don't really know if that's possible, at least in terms of the actual word and what love means. I don't know if that's really possible. But again, can't state it enough. Love for others, the implication for others. The opposite of love for others is love for self. That paradox, love for self, is a paradox. It's selfishness. Mankind's nature became so weakened through transgression that it was impossible for him in his own strength to resist the power of evil. Now, there's a lot of discussion and debate about, where humans came from and the powers of good and evil in the universe, and even the fall of man, this concept, and where selfishness and pride and all this stuff kind of fits into the mix. But if you really look at the root of evil, isn't it fair to say that most of it has to do with people preferring themselves above anyone else? If God wants us to live in a universe guided by and influenced and permeated with love, it means that our default used to be, or God's preference was that it should be, for us to care for others, to uplift others, to do what we can for the benefit of someone else, even sometimes at our own expense. But when you look at the world today, when you look at sin and just about every sin out there, it could be classified as someone putting their own preference, their own desires, their own wants above someone else. If you take robbery, for example, it's someone who's not trying to respect what someone else owns. They're trying to take that with no regard for that person, what they've worked for, what they may have earned, what they may have deserved. They're just saying, my needs and my wants are more important than yours, so I'm going to do what I want and take what I want. When you think of a concept like idolatry, and there's a lot of that going on today, but very rarely is it done because, you know what, I want the best for my spouse, so I'm going to go and cheat on them. You don't hear that argument. You can't. It's almost always going to be born out of some kind of selfishness or some kind of thing where, yeah, I have my cake, but I want to eat it too. Regardless of the feelings or the emotions of anyone else who may be involved. Regardless of the future impact that those decisions can have. I'm sure you guys know stories. You may have family members or loved ones. This is not foreign to us. We understand it. We get it. Selfishness is the opposite of love. And because of sin, selfishness took the place of love in God's perfect creation. And because of that selfishness, that's what makes it impossible to resist the power of evil, because evil is predicated on this desire for self to be elevated above anything and anyone else. And when we get rid of love, we lose the best barrier that we have against trying to serve ourselves. That's what love is, the greatest barrier against serving self. Mankind was made captive by Satan and would have remained so forever had not God specially interposed. He needed to, because there's no way that we could make it through and fall in selfish, sinful nature to care for anyone else but ourselves again. God had to come through. It was the tempter's purpose to thwart the divine plan in man's creation, and we can say that he succeeded in that regard at that point. And he wanted to fill the earth with woe and desolation. Look throughout history. Look throughout any expression of any people, regardless of their political status, their ideological status or viewpoints, their theological or theoretical perspectives, regardless of their religious status or belief system, regardless of their culture. Every single bad thing that has happened in history happened because of selfishness. Every single one. Because someone said, you know what? I'm going to elevate my desires and my wants above the needs of anybody else with no regard or care for that person or people or culture. You can keep on going down the line. I think you get what I'm trying to say here. The irony of all of this is that Satan's goal to flip humanity to be a reflection of selfishness, which is the very thing that he was all about, oddly enough. He would try to point to all this evil and say, oh, that was God. That's his fault. That's what you get for creating man, God. Selfishness. What'd you expect? Look at the contrast. Man was originally endowed with noble powers and a well-balanced mind, a loving mind, a mind that sought to look for the good in others and to prefer others above self for the sake of their benefit, realizing mutual benefit. That was God's intention. And yet through selfishness replacing love because of what Satan did to God's creation. It's the complete opposite. We all care about ourselves. We all only care about the things that we want, our heart's desires. Disney, follow your heart. Yeah, I said it. But that's what it is today. That's what it is today. And Satan is trying to flip it so that we blame God for the selfishness in our own hearts, when that wasn't his intention at all. God is love. God is the opposite of selfishness. And when we stepped away from him, we became nothing but selfish. It's how we dare to take the perspective of God as a selfish tyrant, because we're looking at it through our own perspective, which is tainted with selfishness. It's hard for us to comprehend. And I'm not saying that I have all the answers or I have the magic code to help you understand God perfectly. I don't. But there are some great things here that can help us better understand why we are the way that we are. And maybe even better understand that our default now doesn't always have to be our default. There is an option out there that's better. There is something out there that can redeem us from this selfish, self-centered existence so we can live in the joy of harmony, of love, and community with those around us. But it's not going to come from us. It's not going to come from us. But you know what? We'll stop there for today. Chapter 2, The Sinner's Need of Christ. It's the Buff Missionary. Like, subscribe, and share. And we will continue with chapter 2 tomorrow. So until then, we out. Peace.